Welcome back to Coast Vue. That was a really awesome conversation with Mayor Tony Kennon from Orange Beach. If you missed it, you can go to the SuperTalk Gulf Coast Facebook page and watch it. He's a good friend. They're facing some challenges, but they're really, really organized, and they're going to get out of this mess. Let's turn now to my friend Jeff Duncan with The Athletic. He's covered the Saints longer than any other human being on earth, which I know when I say that, Jeff, it makes you sound old, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. 2 decades, almost half of the entire franchise existence. I've covered the team.
That's incredible, man. And we appreciate you being such a good friend to me and this show. We work together at the timespeakinginola.com, and you're a good guy. Hey, you heard the end of my conversation with the mayor from Orange Beach. That sort of reminded me of the story that you did about Hurricane Laura for The Athletic. Why don't you tell about what you learned at McNeese State and what some of your impressions were?
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Ricky. I spent almost a full day over in Lake Charles last week reporting that story. McNeese State University, of course, located there in Lake Charles. It's a FCS Division I program. They're coached by Frank Wilson, who's a New Orleans native who I knew used to be on the LSU staff. He was on the Ole Miss staff when Ed Ogeron was there. He's a good friend of Coach Ed Ogeron. So I wanted to go over and visit him, Ricky, frankly, because I can't think of any coach going through what he's going through right now. If you think about it, they had the COVID pandemic. Frank just got hired in January. The pandemic hits in March. He doesn't even get a chance to have spring football or a practice. And then as soon as they get ready for the season, here comes Hurricane Laura. And of course, we all saw probably on the news footage what happened there. I think some people are under the misperception that they, quote, dodged a bullet in Lake Charles, and it's anything but over there. They didn't get quite the storm surge. If you remember those ominous reports, people said it was going to be unsurvivable storm surge, and I think that really shocked people. And as they watched the coverage the next morning, they didn't get quite the storm surge that was forecast, but they had sustained winds of 150 miles per hour up to 180 miles per hour. And I was just shocked at the damage when I got over there, driving around the entire region, not just the city of Lake Charles, but the storm damage. Ricky, there's not a roof in Lake Charles that isn't damaged. Every roof I saw had either a blue tarp on it or was completely blown away. And the trees, massive pine trees, snapped in half like twigs. It's going to take months for them to recover and get through this devastation. And unfortunately, I feel like most of America has either other distractions right now or other concerns with the wildfires out west. We have a presidential election coming up. You all in the Gulf Coast, especially east of you, they've had to deal with Sally's fallout. So there's just a lot of other things on people's minds. I think people have forgotten about the great people over in Lake Charles and Cameron Parish.
Well, I was with the president of Mississippi Power Company last night, Anthony Wilson, and he had teams over there in Louisiana. He sent teams over to Alabama. The good news is that we have such great emergency response from Louisiana, from Texas, from Mississippi, from Alabama and Florida, where the way they work together and converge around disasters. That's true in the nonprofit community and whatever. But as far as America is concerned, as we learned after Katrina, man, they can move on pretty quickly. And
yes.
We're sort of left to our own devices. Hey, let's shift gears. I am so thrilled that your new book on the Sean Payton, Drew Brees era is now in print. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, actually, look, I got a copy of it right here. Just arrived at my house, advanced copies. Yesterday's a pretty exciting day for an author when you actually see the tangible evidence of your hard work come to fruition. So that was exciting for me to get those advanced copies. The official release is not till next month, October 13th, but you can pre-order it right now online at Amazon or Triumph Books. And I'm really excited about it. The team looks like they're going to have another very good season. I thought their opening win against Tampa was, impressive in a number of ways, even though they only played probably, Ricky, their C game. Yeah. And they still had a pretty comfortable win against a pretty good team. So I actually was encouraged by that game more than discouraged. I know some people are worried that they didn't move the ball on offense. I think all that's going to come. I'm not worried about that at all. But I delivered a book to Drew and Sean both this morning. They got the first copies of it. They're excited about reading, and hopefully we'll have some signings coming up. We'll be able to announce on your show over in the Gulf Coast, Mississippi area, and also here in New Orleans.
So, Jeff, I want to talk about the Saints and really zero in on what we learned. And it's been great having these conversations with you. So I looked at things like, is the defense going to be better? It certainly looks like that's the case after they got their feet under, and we'll talk about that. With Micheal Thomas's injury, I want to zero in on that. They have so many opportunities to overcome that injury. We'll talk about that. But but as it relates to your book, Drew Brees is in a kind of a bit of a spot right now, and that is because some people believe that since he sort of changed, he didn't change anything, incidentally. He is as patriotic today as he was back before the social injustice stuff really kind of rose to the forefront. But people are having some negative feelings about him. Help us understand why that should not be the case.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk about this, because I've got a lot of reaction also from readers, from fans on social media, in my email inbox at The Athletic. And look, he definitely has polarized some of the fan base, but I do think it's just a small, extreme group on both sides. I really believe, for the most part, most of the fans still support Drew Brees and are going to continue to. I think it's a little unforgiving to take a 15-second soundbite and change your opinion on someone who has put together a 15-year body of work here in New Orleans and a 20-year body of work in the NFL. That seems unfortunate. It's a little bit reflective of the times that we're in right now. Drew Brees is one of the most unbelievable, giving, caring superstars that we've ever come across. I've had a chance to work with him in this book project. I can tell you he's the genuine, real deal. He reminds me a lot of Archie Manning and the Mannings. Sometimes they seem so nice and so gracious that some people, the cynical of us, the cynics in us, believe it's fake, and it's not. That's just the way they are. And I can tell you, Drew Brees is no less of a patriot than he was before. I mean, his grandfather was his mentor and idol. His grandfather fought in World War II, was a decorated veteran. I think what happened with Drew Brees in his comment was simply him trying to state his opinion on the flag, what it means to him. And to him, it means his grandfather and the military service. Drew's been on a number of USO tour visits. He is very much respectful of the military, and as that relates to his family. But we all know this, Ricky. The flag doesn't mean that to everybody in this country. And I wrote a column on this years ago, that what it means to Colin Kaepernick is not the same thing that it means to Drew Brees. And everyone has their own opinion on this. And that's why I think America is what it is, the great country it is we can all see things differently. And we might not agree on everything, but you have to respect the other person's opinion. And I think Drew Brees learned in this case that not everybody sees the flag as a symbol of the American military. And I think that's where he erred in how he stated his opinion. But I don't think he's changed any at all. I really feel, sorry for him to some degree that people have lashed out the way they have, because I know it hurts him to the core. And he's no less of a patriot than he ever was before.
I think what happened, Jeff, you and I talked about this before, but in the moment, in that very precise moment when racial justice and the whole social justice discussion was really peaking, he said what he said, and it came across as tone deaf, and he knows it.
Yes.
It was nothing wrong with what he said. It was just in the moment saying it. It didn't give deference to what was emerging in America, and that was a discussion about this. And it's an important discussion. But the reality is we live in a polarized world today. Social media takes things like this, and they force us to be divided when we all, as a country, should be coming together. And he got caught up in that moment. I mean, it's literally a tornado and forcing all of us in America to have to choose sides, which is ridiculous. I mean, why should we have to choose sides when we're just talking about an important discussion about equality in this country? But the polarization has done that, and unfortunately, Drew got caught up in that. And I think hopefully time will be an appropriate judge of his sincerity, his empathy, his desire to lead. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what he wants to be. Let's do this, Jeff. I don't want to short circuit any last thoughts you have on this. So what we'll do when we come back from the break, we'll close the discussion as it relates to Drew and come back on the latest on the Saints. But this is Jeff Duncan. He's a columnist and writer for The Athletic. He has covered the Saints longer than any other human being. And he knows this team and has connections like nobody else. We'll see you after the break.
Listen live or on demand and watch episodes of Coast Vue on your laptop, desktop, or on your phone or tablet by going to SuperTalk.msGulfCoast.com.
It's a great time to be on the coast, and we love talking about it. Welcome to Coast Vue with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast Vue. We have Jeff Duncan. He's a columnist and writer for The Athletic. He's covered the Saints more than anyone on earth, and we're just having a conversation. We're going to move now to a discussion about the Saints, but I want to close out the discussion about Drew Brees and how he got caught up in this moment. What you and I talked about offline before, Jeff, is that the NFL thrives off of middle America. They don't thrive off of the extremes. They're not, as a general rule, a political organization. They're trying to entertain America, and most people are in the middle. How does it talk about that?
Well, I think it's an important point to note, Ricky. The reason the NFL has become the most popular sports league in the world, not just America, is because it appeals to such a mass audience. And you're right, the main audience, the main demographic for the NFL is middle America. Akron, Ohio, Des Moines, Iowa. Even though they don't even have NFL teams, they're huge NFL viewership ratings. Same for New Orleans, of course. New Orleans is the number one market in America for NFL viewership. But the ratings, notably this weekend, were down. You would think they would be up across the board because of the lack of NFL games that we've seen. This was the first weekend, but they were down. And I think this political division in America has affected that. And I also think there's a lot of distractions right now. We've mentioned the natural disasters across the country. Also, I think the COVID pandemic has affected that. But the Saints Tampa Bay game was one of the few games where the ratings were actually up. That was the main game on Fox on Sunday, broadcast over 90% of America. Those ratings were up. So there were people still interested in that game. But as a whole, people are not watching NFL games as much as they used to. I think there's some other reasons for that. People consume sports now differently. They stream online on their phones. So I think it's a little more complex than people just tuning out for political reasons. But it's a tricky situation to navigate for Roger Goodell and the NFL executives, because they are in some ways turning off their main demographic.
And man, I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to and who have sent me messages that say, I want to watch football. I don't want to watch messages. I don't want to hear politics. And
that's why people watch sports for the most part. It's an escape.
Yes.
It's entertainment, and it's an escape. And because the NFL has become so big, we now look to the league for leadership on things that I frankly don't think we should. They're a sports league. It reminds me, if you remember, Ricky, the Ray Rice situation with the domestic violence, domestic abuse. All of a sudden, Roger Goodell became the arbiter for domestic violence in America. His punishments for Ray Rice was being bandied about. Was it harsh enough? Was it too harsh? And he's a sports commissioner. Why are we letting this get involved? It's a sports league, and we don't look at other sports leagues that way through that same prism. But the NFL is such a Goliath and so popular, it's really transcended just the sports world.
And so Drew gets caught up in that vortex. We'll move on. And, God bless Drew. And I think, your book's going to help remind people the unbelievable legacy he leaves, not just on the field, but in the community. So let's shift gears. Micheal Thomas's injury will not affect the Saints too severely. For what reason?
Well, actually, the book, if you get to read the book, and I'm sure you will, hopefully most of your viewers will get a chance to read it, you'll see why. Because the Saints offense, the way it's put together, it can morph. It's like an amoeba to the ingredients. A bad analogy might be, say, a pot of gumbo and what ingredients you have. They don't have the andouille now, so they've got to make seafood gumbo, but they've got all the other ingredients, and they're going to throw this thing together and shape it and mix it up in a different way. They've done it over the years. Last year when Drew Brees went down, they won 5 games and didn't lose a game without Drew Brees, who's the straw that stirs the offensive drink here. They've done it in the past when Reggie Bush has gone down, Jimmy Graham's gone down, Alvin Kamara more recently. They have so many plays. They have so much a volume of offense here because Sean Payton, Drew Brees, Pete Carmichael, Joe Lombardi, Curtis Johnson, these coaches on the offensive side of the ball have all been together for a decade and a half. And what that has allowed them to do is over the years, add plays here and there as they've changed personnel over the years. You remember, Ricky, early on, they were built around Deuce McAllister and Reggie Bush, and they had 2 great running backs, and the offense reflected that. And then they got Devery Henderson and Robert Meacham and Marcus Colston, the offense, and Lance Moore, and the offense kind of was focused on the receivers. And then when they got Jimmy Graham, an all-pro tight end, suddenly it kind of became a tight end offense. That's how this offense works, and they're just going to change the playbook now without a stud receiver like Mike Thomas, and they'll spread it around more to Jared Cook and throw it in the backfield to Kamara and Latavius Murray. They'll get Deontay Harris, the young kid, involved, and they'll just change the offense, and it'll morph into something different.
We have less than a minute left. Real quick, defense, what'd you think?
I think this is the best defense they've had in the Sean Payton era, hands down. They've made great improvements on the back end. Janoris Jenkins showed that. They've now got 2 legitimate shutdown corners. They've not had that in the entire era. And the other thing we haven't talked about, because I've been rambling so long, special teams are the best in the league. They dominated that game against Tampa Bay with the kicking game.
Well, it's great to see. Hey, one of the things we're talking to Jeff about is having him come back on a weekly basis, and we're going to find a slot for him. But he's such a good friend of the show. The opportunity to do these weekly reviews of the team will be incredible. So I'm hoping that all works out. So we have to go, Jeff. It's been great to talk to you. It's been Jeff Duncan from The Athletic, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ricky. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Thank you. Have a great weekend.